Hello and welcome to Films and That. My name's Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
And today we are looking at Soul Reaver. Now this is part 2 of our Legacy of Kain series. So
long-awaited sequel.
We recommend you go and watch part 1 up here or in the link in the description. But other than that, let's get started. The vampire Raziel is betrayed and killed, but is resurrected as a devourer of souls, intent on hunting down his killers. This review contains spoilers. So, to start off with, I just want to go through some of the backstory. So, in the last Legacy of Kain game, we are left with Kain choosing not to kill himself, damning Nosgoth to an eternity of ruin.
But what we do have, interestingly, is a kind of reverse Terminator situation, where the protagonist of the first game is now the antagonist. Thank you for that. Of the sequel.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all.
Kain has created a new world order of vampires. He's resurrected 6 people, turned them into vampires, and these have become his main lieutenants. So Raziel, he's the firstborn of Kain's lieutenants.
And the protagonist of this game. We find out that vampires in this world, the Nosgoth world, sort of evolve, kind of, within their lifetime. Because they live for such a long time, I guess, they slowly mutate and morph and start to develop new features. Each vampire seems to obtain these sort of unique abilities to themselves, particularly the powerful ones like the lieutenants. But Kain has one big rule for all his vampires.
And that is that he goes into a state of metamorphosis before everyone else does. So that's a kind of way of him being more powerful than anyone else.
Yeah, which is obviously, because he doesn't want anyone to usurp him. But Raziel, I guess it was pretty naive of him, really, to think that they wouldn't take it badly.
Well, I didn't get the sense that he did it on purpose. I kind of just thought it was something that happened to them every now and again. And it was always Kain did it first because he was the more powerful one. But it's kind of, I just thought that his body was kind of surpassing Kain in terms of power at that point. He ends up getting wings, doesn't he, in this kind of brilliant opening sequence.
Yeah, very memorable. He presents the wings to Kain in front of all his brothers. It's pretty good animation, actually. What I really like about this animation is the expressions on Kain's face. He can't contain how sort of pleased he is. And then the face turns and he tears Raziel's wings. And everything goes downhill from there for Raziel.
So then he's ordered into the abyss, isn't he? So his brothers throw him into this vortex of water, which is kind of like acid to vampires.
Cast him in. Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss.
So you got a really brutal opening sequence, and you kind of really feel for Raziel at this point.
Yeah.
You've only just met him, and he's just been completely brutalised within the first 5 minutes. So an eternity passes and Raziel is resurrected by the Elder God. So this is a giant squid monster, basically.
Yeah, which I assumed was originally based on like the H.P. Lovecraft eldritch horror type thing.
The Elder God is the god in this world. He controls the balance of life and death. Everything goes through his wheel, he says. That's
certainly, at least in this game, that is certainly the impression that we're given. We're told he's basically God. He looks like a terrifying monster, but, never mind. Well, you get the sense he hasn't created everything. He's just like control. He says he's the hub of the wheel.
Yeah.
He just controls the world.
Settle your dispute with Kain. Destroy him and your brethren. Free their souls and let the wheel of fate churn again.
They go into more detail into what he is later on, and it becomes more suspect as to whether he's actually a benevolent force or not. But at this point, Raziel is kind of given the choice of being resurrected to then avenge his murder, much like what happened in the first game.
Yes. Yeah, there's that parallel.
Yeah, although interestingly, I think this wasn't meant to be anything to do with Blood Omen at all. It's meant to be a separate property, but they just had the license for Legacy of Kain
I heard
as
of
well.
this called Shifter, am
Yeah.
I right? Yeah. And they just sort of ended up merging the two together.
That explains why they did that and then didn't go down the route of having Kain be the main character again. So that's quite interesting in a sequel to not have the same main character.
Yeah, Raziel became a bit of a cult figure, I think, after this as well.
Yeah, because he's actually likeable, where Kain was always a bit of a dick. Raziel, you've got that awful thing happening to him at the beginning, and he's quite naive, but he tries to be more and more noble as he goes through. So he's more likeable than Kain, I would say.
Yeah, and you get more sense of him being the gamer or whatever in this, because you're discovering everything as he is, more or less. He does give a bit of narration every now and then to sort of fill in some of the gaps for you. The idea is that because so much time has passed, in a way, this new world is just as new to him as it is to you.
The sanctuary of the clans reduced to ruin. Beyond these walls lay the pillars of Nosgoth, the seat of Kain's empire. How humble it now appeared, collapsing into the dust of its former magnificence.
Yeah, and he seems quite disgusted by it. Like you get the sense that he viewed vampirism as kind of quite noble. So he saw himself and all his brothers as being quite pure beings, and then seeing this decayed world where the vampires have evolved into monsters now.
The thing that he was completely committed to is now the thing he wants to destroy.
Yeah, because it betrayed him.
They are the children of your brother, Duma.
That's impossible. These foul, scuttling beasts could not be kin of our high blood.
Part of Raziel's gift, I suppose, as being resurrected, is that he's no longer a vampire. He's a devourer of souls, so he's like a spirit that goes around eating people's souls. Which is,
with a kind of corpse-like physical body, I suppose.
Yeah, which is incredibly dark when you think about it.
Yeah. It's very poignant. The whole thing is this whole thing about life and death being this cyclical thing that you can't control, you can only delay it. And the Elder God, his main objective is he wants to continue that cycle, and he wants you to go and wipe out the vampires because vampires are immortal and they delay that process.
The birth of one of Kain's abominations traps the essence of life. There is no balance. The souls of the dead remain trapped. I cannot spin them in the wheel of fate. They cannot complete their destinies.
Yeah, so Raziel can, because he is essentially a ghost, he can transport himself between the spirit world and like the real world or the material realm.
In any horror film, he would be a monster, you know. But in this, he's your hero. And actually, I wonder how many people might have been put off by the game, seeing, what, this is the guy that you are? He looks horrific.
Similarly, like with Blood Omen, you do go around kind of fighting your brothers who betrayed you and killing them one by one. They're all hideous monsters, which I really liked.
Show yourself, creature.
Do you not recognize me, brother? Am I so changed?
Malkaya, who is big slug monster.
Well, they say that because he was made last, he received the poorest part of Kain's gift. So like his skin wasn't holding his insides anymore. They were just decaying and like it was all coming out.
They were resurrected after death, so they were already corpses by the time they were resurrected. So that kind of makes sense, I guess, with the aspect of Malkaya becoming this almost like maybe like a Nosferatu figure, a kind of decayed vampire. Yeah,
and the other good boss fight is Zephon, who's a giant
very
spider.
Memorable. Giant spider that has become attached to a cathedral. Yeah. You know, that old story.
Each one of them was like tasked to kind of go away and create more vampires based on their DNA or whatever. And they each were given areas of Nosgoth as their own land, and they had their own clans there.
And each ended up developing their own little kind of power and image, which reflected their boss, I guess. You know, the lieutenants. The big spider monster Zephon creates small spider vampires. They've got like 4 arms and legs, but they're all elongated. Yeah. They used to shit me up, to be honest, because they could crawl on the walls. Because I guess that the whole idea is that these vampires are sort of overcoming things that would have hindered them before. So I guess, the Zephon spider vampires are overcoming the vampires' inability to scale walls.
That is what they say, though, isn't it? That's the power you get from Zephon when you kill him, is the power to climb. Okay.
Yeah.
I do like the sigils of each of the clans.
Yeah.
You really know you're in a different place.
They're they do kind of look like an ink block painting, but they're quite unique and clever.
Yeah, and the way they've done them, they work when there's just one of them, but they also work when there's a mirror version of them as well. So if you look at Raziel's kind of like cloak that he wears, it's like two versions of his logo. I really like that design element to it.
Yeah, I think the concept artist must have been thinking about Rorschach paintings, I guess. So the voice acting in the first game, there was some good stuff, but there was also it was a little bit Monty Python at times. Yeah. Whereas in this game, everybody talks like they've been to RADA.
Yeah.
You are lost in a maze of moral relativism, Kain. These apparitions and portents. What game are you playing now? Destiny is a game, is it not?
Lots of really great voice actors in this. Like they really stepped up their game. They had Simon Templeman again from the first game. Yeah. He's brilliant. But you've got Michael Bell, who's Raziel.
How could you profane a priest by turning him into a vampire?
You've got Tony J, who's the Elder God as well. He's got this really deep, booming, theatrical voice.
You have always been, and will always be, my Soul Reaver.
Yeah, and then we've got a new director as well for this. So Amy Hennig, who's quite a big name in the video game world.
Yeah, certainly now. A big association with Naughty Dog Productions, I believe.
Yeah, she worked on the Uncharted games. Well, they're quite story-focused as well, so she really does care about the writing.
If anything, I think a lot of people would say that the biggest strength of this whole series is the writing. I don't want to go too much into the gameplay, but the gameplay, I still liked it, but...
It's dated.
It's dated, very dated now. It's so often where you'll be like swinging your sword and you'll just be doing it over there, and it looks so daft, when the enemy's there and you're like, oh, it's just because I wasn't at the right angle, and also jumping on platforms. Christ, that's annoying.
I was having real trouble getting Raziel just on a cliff on a next segment. My daughter came in, she said, what are you doing, Dad? I said, well, I'm playing the game that I did. She said, well, how long do you think you've been in here? I said, about 20 minutes. She said, you've been here for 4 hours.
One thing I did like about the gameplay, though, is this aspect of shifting between these realms kind of drastically changes how you approach the landscape.
It's more, I think, a puzzle game than a fighting game. There are a lot of really interesting puzzles that you could do with this shifting thing. Because in the spiritual realm, the idea is, you can't pick anything up or touch anything or interact with anything. Just like ghosts can't. So everything sort of stays solid. So in order to work out certain puzzles, you might have to shift to kind of freeze, the world around you or whatever.
The spectral realm is kind of twisted and warped in a kind of horrific way. So like a wall can turn into a platform in the spectral realm, and then it will go back to being a wall in the normal realm. So you could jump on it and then go up there and then shift back. Things like water is immaterial in the spectral realm, so you could walk through water like it was nothing, but then you might need water to get to a certain ledge. And then go through the material realm that way. So it's a real clever use of gameplay in that aspect. And then coupled with the intelligent story, it's real a kind of marriage of something that's aimed at a mature audience.
I mean, given we just talked about so much about how much it's about philosophy, which is, it's not, I don't necessarily say it's completely unknown in games, but it tends to be like more of an afterthought usually in games. But with this, it's pretty much central to the whole story.
Kain! The abyss has been unkind. I am your creation, Kain. Now, as before, you criticize your own work.
So one of the turning points of the game is when you face Kain for the first time. So this happens relatively early on, like after the first boss. He's armed with a Soul Reaver, this blade from the first game, and when he tries to strike you down with it, it shatters, and then the essence of the sword is then bound to you.
There's kind of like a sword that becomes a kind of spirit sword, and it's like leeches itself onto you, like you're a host or something.
They do say that its true form is a wraith blade. You've kind of restored it to its original state, basically.
From this moment and ever afterwards, you and this blade are inextricably bound. Soul Reaver and Weaver of Souls, your destinies are intertwined.
We probably should mention that Ariel makes a return in this.
Ariel the ghost, not the mermaid. Not the prettiest of ghosts. Do you think she's gone mad by this point?
Well, she's been there for like 2,000 years at this point?
Ceaselessly conscious as this wretched world's history unfurls.
She just seems a lot more like she just doesn't want to know.
But yeah, on the advice of Ariel and the Elder God, you go from place to place, dispatching your brothers, killing them in various ways. And that whole part of the game is a lot more simple than Blood Omen.
One thing we haven't talked about actually is that this is actually a post-apocalyptic world, which is brought about by the destruction of the pillars at the end of the first game. The pillars, it's not like a sort of instant destruction, it's kind of a really slow burn. There is an increasing number of earthquakes, plants don't seem to grow. Humanity has basically been sort of almost completely wiped out. But even the vampires don't really seem to have their place anymore.
All this destruction is all down to Kain not killing himself. That becomes like the theme of the series. Should Kain be killed? Because Kain's of the opinion that it's important for the vampires to still be alive, even at the cost of this world.
As long as a single one of us stands, we are legion.
Whereas other people think, well, the whole world is in decay now. If Kain dies, the vampires die, then the world would get better. So it's this kind of like moral dilemma at the heart of this.
Yeah. And you get the impression, though, that Kain has a kind of messianic complex as well. He seems to think he's the saviour. He does seem to have delusions of grandeur. But then, by the end of the game, you start to understand that there's something that he's not letting on.
We didn't mention when Kain and Raziel fought the first time, and the sword was broken. Raziel noticed that Kain wasn't unhappy with this.
The blade is vanquished. So it unfolds, and we are a step closer to our destinies.
And we get a sense that Kain has been planning something for this entire time.
Yeah, which makes you feel more manipulated. And you think there's like a sort of ongoing theme of like free will in this game, of what is the true nature of free will and things like that.
Yeah, and destiny and things have been foretold. So as Raziel travels through this world, he discovers the tomb of the Seraphim, and he initially has this opinion of the Seraphim that they're murderers and merciless hunters, that they tracked down and ruthlessly killed all these vampires. But then he ends up realising that he was once Seraphim, and that Kain resurrected the fallen Seraphim members as part of his kind of elite guard. So all your brothers are part of this elite Seraphim warrior priest.
Yeah, it's kind of like the ultimate insult, I guess, to the Seraphim, making their their strongest warriors into vampires.
Yeah, so there's a really interesting kind of naivety with Raziel. This nobility that he's been kind of promised seems like a lie at this point. And this is the turning point where he questions what he's been told. Were the Seraphim right for killing the vampires? Were the vampires right? What was once quite clear-cut for him becomes a lot more complicated.
Were my hands not as bloody as these? Worse, I had spilled the blood of my brothers.
So after you've killed all your brothers, the last person to fight is Kain again. You track him down and he's been hiding out at Mobius's time streaming chamber.
Yeah, if you remember Mobius from the first game.
Time, unless you master it, it will master you.
As Raziel goes round exploring this time streaming chamber, he starts to see visions of what happened in the game.
These apparitions torment me. Has this all been foretold?
And then you start seeing visions of the future, start to see how people can be manipulated by this.
Yeah.
This cannot be. What madness does this scene portend?
So like he sees himself fighting with Kain, he sees himself devouring Ariel, the Balance Guardian. It then becomes a lot more complicated. You've got this simple story of just revenge at the beginning, of going around killing all your brothers. And then it becomes this thing about manipulation, free will, and time travel, again, it becomes way more complicated, like the first game did.
This whole kind of fight back thing, which again moves on into the next game, trying to fight back against determinism and gaining free will.
Kain's just not in a war with like everyone. He's in a war with time itself. Being given a bad hand in life, he's kind of saying, well, I don't want to live this hand. I want to make a better choice for myself. Because he was doomed from the start, wasn't he? He was always going to be an arsehole. He was always going to be destined to kill himself and all this kind of stuff. And he's kind of refused to do that. And I think that kind of defiance is really interesting, really.
At last. I must say I'm disappointed in your progress. I imagined you'd be here sooner.
Yeah, and the final fight with Kain.
It is a bit like kind of lackluster, and then it kind of finishes with Kain retreating, basically.
Yeah, he just escapes through a portal, and then it goes like, to be continued.
Yeah.
Which is a big kind of kick in the face, really, isn't it?
So researching into this more, we discovered that the initial plan was actually you would fight Kain and actually wipe out all the vampires. They didn't have enough time to finish the game, and then there was talk that people wanted a sequel. They didn't want to end it here. So we kind of have to take this into a different direction now. And that's why we ended up with a sequel and not a finished game.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be pretty confident that you're going to get a sequel to end it like that, don't you? It ends with Raziel and Kain like hurtling backwards in time to be played out in Soul Reaver 2. I don't know, it's really difficult to talk about this game because it's so much a part of Soul Reaver 2 that it's not really its own thing, I don't think.
Although the dialogue is really good in this, actually the story is quite simple. It's quite a simple revenge plot. And clearly, as soon as they realised that they were going to get this sequel, this whole thing, it does to an extent feel like a build-up. You are kind of left sort of hanging, you know, and I think that was intentional.
I don't think the characters go on any kind of arc in this one, do they?
No, because it's all sort of left, the arc is all left up to the next game. You get like some niggling doubts, but essentially at the end of the day, Raziel has his, you know, he has his plan, which is to kill Kain, and he doesn't really deviate from that. You know, it's always his intent throughout. There are questions that get raised, but in a way, you could argue that we kind of end at the end of the second act, maybe.
It just kind of opens a load of questions which get answered later on in the next games. But I think that's what makes the next games better, is that they're not thinking about an individual game like you would think about an individual film. They're thinking about the game as being like an episode of a TV show. Things are set up to be paid off later, and it's a lot more immersive storytelling in a long format than we're used to with games.
Do you think it would have ended up like Lost eventually?
If it went on, yeah. Probably. I think by the time...
It turns out they were all dead all along.
It was all in limbo. To be fair, it kind of is in limbo, isn't he?
Yeah.
For the entire time.
Well, look, literally almost.
Yeah.
Death would be a release next to this travesty.
I think we want to talk about the music.
Yeah? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The opening theme for this is one of my favourite pieces of music from a game ever. Weird that it was kind of created by a band called Information Society, which were like an electro-pop band.
I just assumed it was orchestral initially, and it turns out it's not.
But you do get this a real grand gothic kind of soundscape, isn't it? Oldie-worldy instruments like drums and trumpets and things, but with a kind of distorted digital twist, I would say.
Yeah, it gives that sense of dread in certain places you go. There might be some like a bit of whispering here and there as part of the soundtrack that kind of, you know, makes it all the more tense. Like you said, the opening theme is the most impressive thing in the whole game, and it is that good.
That opening graphic sequence coupled with that music is just perfect. Setup. It's really powerful, isn't it?
I don't know if you had this, but there were certain games where I used to love to play them for the sake of the opening visuals or whatever.
I play these games because I want to get to the next bit of dialogue. You know, not because I want to fight vampires or whatever, but because I want to learn more about the world and learn more about the story. Because there really is a real rich history in this game, and it spans like thousands and thousands of years.
But I think the atmosphere actually in this game is something that is worth talking about as well.
Yeah, it's just an endless sense of decay, I think. Yeah.
And the fog, which is probably, just what they had in the game fog.
To hide loading times.
Yeah. But it works, like they make it work, which is what you should do when you've got limited technology.
Yeah, it's very oppressive, isn't it? Just the fact that all the monsters you face are just like way bigger than you.
Yeah.
All your brother's just massive, and you're just this tiny little creature trying to fight your way through the world. Nothing is trying to help you, apart from the Elder God, I suppose. But even in the spirit realm, there's things that's trying to hunt you and kill you.
There's no respite, basically. There's no time where you can just sort of sit down and have a rest and a cup of tea. I mean, he couldn't have a cup of tea anyway because he hasn't got a jaw.
So what were your final thoughts about Soul Reaver, Sam?
So this was a very innovative game for its time, and I think that in of itself is really extraordinary. I think it was very intelligently written. I think it really pulled out all the best elements of the previous game and improved on them. There's a couple of gameplay elements that, are a bit awkward, but overall it still for me was a memorable experience, especially at the time, and the gameplay didn't bother me that much at the time. If I had to sort of summarize it, really my main issue with it is that it kind of does feel like an unfinished game in a way, which actually technically it was.
So how did you feel about the ending then? Because you would have played it and gone, what, is that it?
It wasn't hugely memorable. I mean, this was like the big bad, this was the big boss, and we didn't get that kind of closure that we wanted.
I've always felt this one was a bit of a chore to play. And I think that's because a lot of the kind of like clumsy 3D platforming is just frustrating, and like the block puzzles, there's endless block puzzles.
Also, if you take like the Rahab stage where you kill your brother who's a big fish person, it's so easy to make a mistake in that, and if you die in the material realm, you have to go back in the spiritual realm and kind of go back to the point where you can shift back into the material realm and do it all over again. There's no save points in this game.
Well, that's another point, actually. When you start the game, so you've turned the console off, saved it, started it up again, you start in the very beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And you have to traverse back to where you were, which is just a massive pain.
I mean, it's not like that bad, because you do get these portals that you can find and that will take you back to places. But it's not like any modern game at all. You don't start just before the boss or whatever. You're always going to have to do a little bit of trekking. And I guess that can be frustrating for a lot of first-time gamers. Of all the brothers, the one I found the most interesting was Micaiah, because he was more conflicted, whereas all the others were just like, yeah, I'm daddy, I'm boss, I'm gonna beat you, which is what you get in most games. But Micaiah was like, he says something like,
"You think I feel no revulsion for this form?"
He's almost wanting to die.
Yeah,
and which maybe why he's the first boss you fight.
It's maybe why he's hanging around a big meat crusher as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that for? I don't understand.
Old games.
It's a convenient like drill thing that
old games.
We've said this for Blood Omen as well. Blood Omen was a springboard for the later games. Soul Reaver also is a springboard for later games, where the story really does take off from Soul Reaver 2 onwards. So there's more to come, I think.
Yes, stick with us.
Raziel, Redeemer and Destroyer, Pawn and Messiah, welcome, time-span soul. Welcome to your destiny.
Okay, that's it for this time on Films and That. If you've liked this video, please consider subscribing or maybe even support Films and That on Patreon. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.